What's your forced to grow up too fast story? I was 10 when I became my mom's doctor. That's what it felt like anyway. Dad got deported when I was 9, and suddenly it was just me and mom in our tiny apartment above Chen's laundromat. The smell of fabric softener and bleach became my normal, mixing with the scent of mom's anxiety every time another envelope arrived. The letters never stopped coming. Hospital bills, insurance forms, payment plans. Everything was in English, which mom could barely speak after 20 years in Texas. She'd hand them to me with shaking fingers and say, "Mija, what does this say?" Like I was some kind of expert instead of a 5th grader who still needed help with long division. I learned words no 10-year-old should know. Deductible, co-payment, out-of-network provider. I'd sit at our wobbly kitchen table with my phone, typing everything into Google Translate, trying to figure out what prior authorization required meant while mom made dinner and pretended she wasn't watching me work. Then came the day that changed everything. Mom had been complaining about a lump in her chest for weeks, but she kept saying it was nothing. When she finally went to the doctor, I had to go with her because she was too scared to go alone. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Dr. Williams spoke so fast I could barely keep up, even in English. Mom just nodded and smiled like she understood, but I could see the panic in her eyes. When he said breast cancer, I felt my stomach drop. I had to be the one to explain it to her later, in broken Spanish mixed with hand gestures and tears. El cáncer, mama, en tu pecho. I watched her face crumble as the words sank in. From that moment, I became her translator for everything. Chemotherapy schedules, side effects, treatment options. I'd write everything down in a notebook with purple flowers on the cover, the one I'd gotten for school but never used for homework anymore. I stopped caring about math tests when I was calculating medication dosages. The worst part was the phone calls. Insurance companies would put me on hold for hours, and I'd sit there with the phone pressed to my ear, doing homework with one hand while waiting for someone to explain why mom's treatment was denied. "I'm calling for my mother," I'd say in my most grown-up voice, hoping they wouldn't ask my age. "Can I speak to her directly?" "She doesn't speak English very well." I translate for her. They'd sigh like I was wasting their time, but they'd talk to me anyway. I learned to argue about coverage and payment plans like I was 30 instead of 11. I got good at it too. Really good. Treatment days were the hardest. We'd take 2 buses to get to the hospital because we couldn't afford parking. Mom would hold my hand the whole way, squeezing tighter when the nausea hit. I'd bring books to read to her during chemo, but mostly I'd just sit there watching the IV drip and counting the minutes until we could go home. The other kids in the waiting room had parents taking care of them. I was the kid taking care of her parent. Nurses would sometimes mistake me for another patient's child and ask where my mom was. "She's getting treatment," I'd say, pointing to the chair where mom sat with her eyes closed, bald head covered by the bright yellow scarf I'd picked out for her. School became impossible. Teachers would ask why my homework was always late, why I fell asleep in class, why I missed so many days. I told them I was helping with family stuff, and they'd nod and move on. Nobody ever asked what kind of family stuff required an 11-year-old to miss school 3 days a week. My friend Katie invited me to her birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese, and I actually cried because I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something just for fun. While other kids were playing arcade games and eating pizza, I was at home reading insurance documents and scheduling doctor appointments. The cancer went into remission when I was 12. Mom rang the bell at the hospital, and I cried harder than I had during the entire treatment. But even after she got better, I couldn't stop being her medical advocate. The fear never went away. Every headache, every tired day, every time she coughed too much, I'd panic and start researching symptoms online.